Hey, welcome to another episode of the Rob Report. I'm your host, Robert Bob TV Brown. Before we get into this segment, by the end of this video, I want you to do a few things for me. First of all, if you like the video, hit the like button. Please do. If you don't like it, hit unlike. It's okay. Make sure you are subscribed to this channel. Sometimes, as Jimmy Dole would say, you find yourself unsubscribed and you need to make sure that you subscribe to this channel. Hit the notification bell right next to it so you can be notified when a new video is being dropped. Whoop, there it is. And more importantly, the super chat will be on for this segment. So if you want to donate toward the efforts of Bob TV, that's freely up to you. I do have a job, but any amount will help toward the growth of this channel. And more important, let us help you help us by introducing you to a program. There's a link down below that says Equal Justice for All. You're going to click that video link, and there's some educational tutorial about a phenomenal program in America that is really making equal justice a reality for every citizen. So this program is phenomenal. The proceeds from you participating in the program will go back, 10% will go back into the Bob TV YouTube channel. So anyway, my name is Robert Brown with the Rob Report. Let's get into it.
Blue collar, white collar, black professors, white scholars, politicians, Dalai Lamas. Everybody in the whole wide world need hope if I be honest. I'm in that number.
Hey, good day. This is Robert Brown with the Rob Report. How are you doing today? All right, so we're going to talk about a touchy subject that has been going on for a while. I don't understand why, for the life of me, this is a very tough subject or touchy subject. Seem like the people that are really getting upset over this issue is certain people in white America and certain people in the Democratic Party. This subject scares the crap out of the Democratic Party. Yet, it makes the Republicans excited too. Why? Because they know they're going to get they really believe that Trump can get elected on this issue. Not by Trump doing whatever he can to fix this issue and make it right. It's for the simple fact that this subject is really putting a little heat on people. Now, I've been a long time advocate of not just giving people my vote. I often term, and you heard me before, coined the word slut vote. I'm not a slut voter. I'm not going to give you my vote just because you say you're running for office, and just because you're black, just because you're white, because you're old or older. It doesn't matter to me. I look at policies, and policies determine a vote from me. I don't just look at policies. I look at what you've done in the past. I will look at what you're currently doing now and what you plan on doing in the future. And then I'm going to get into certain politicians, and then I'm going to get into certain areas where I normally would support a politician, but one, I'm going to really hold their feet on this fire before the election. Now, I chose this picture because it is true. American descendants of slaves. No black agenda, no vote. Now, this was the current situation back in the 60s with Dr. Martin Luther King. They know, Lyndon B. Johnson knew that if he could not garner a certain particular block to get votes, he was not going to win. Dr. Martin Luther King had a coalition of the willing to push hard about the civil rights movement. Now, I got to understand you. White America was fighting against that. They hated that. They didn't want to hear that. Some black Americans were like, well, we got it. Y'all going to mess this up. Please tell me what civil rights is and all that kind of stuff. I mean, tell me how you plan on doing it, how this is going to happen, where we going what kind of legislation we going to push, what kind of money we going to get for this thing, how we going to get civil rights for businesses and civil rights for jobs and things like that. They got nervous. White people got nervous because they did not want black people to have civil rights. Just like today, there's a lot of people don't want black people to have reparations. Now I'm going to talk about this subject. Yet then, some black people got nervous over the civil rights movement. Some of them didn't even want to march. You know, we got it so good. Knowing it wasn't good. Knowing they was getting their head cracked. Knowing they was getting coffee poured on their head if they sat at the counter in a predominantly white restaurant. You got your own. Don't come to ours. You got your own bathroom. Don't use ours. You got your own water. Don't use ours. You got your own restroom. Don't use ours. You got your own movies. Don't use ours. Segregation was tearing up America. Jim Crow laws were horrible, especially in the South. American descendants of slaves. And they basically said, no black agenda, no vote. Now, I know that scares a lot of you Democrats because you need the black vote to beat Trump. You need it. Then this should be a simple issue. And this is the problem that I got with the Democratic Party because it want to set the tone instead of letting the voters set the tone. It's a no black agenda, no vote. Always been like that. I need to know after Obama, I'm like, nah, that brother had me thinking he was going to do something for black people. We got hoodwinked. We got bamboozled. We felt good for a year or two. And after we saw that he was trying to take care of everybody else but us. And then we still, now don't get me wrong, some of us, ADOS, some of us black American descendants of slaves, we went to Obama and said, what you going to do about black people? And he said, well, I'll tell you what, my next term, we're going to work on this. We're going to work on the prison system. We're going to tell Pookie to put his pants up. Me, Michelle, Sasha, and Malia. We're going to fight hard for our people. Not understanding that even though he was a real, true African American from Africa, living in America, he was not an ADOS. And anything that there was no real motivation for him to push hard on this. Yes, growing up, I'm quite sure he probably experienced some racism. Blacker than black dad, whiter than white mom. He stayed with his grandma. I'm quite sure as a mixed boy, he experienced some racism. Then again, he probably didn't experience that much because most of the time they were staying in Indonesia. Let me get off that. This is a serious subject, and it is gaining steam. And it could matter whether you like the subject or not. It doesn't matter whether you're in fear or not of the Democrats or Bernie Sanders or anybody not winning. Then you need to talk to your politicians. Now, let me get into this because a couple of politicians decided that they want to talk about this situation. So we're going to get into it. As you know, I got my spectacles. And look, I'm in a good mood. Because this subject, it's time for this. It's time for this to push. They've been pressing down on it for far too long. W.E.B. Du Bois and other leaders went to FDR and tried to get some help for the black man. FDR told him, nah, man, just sit back. Let me get this new deal done. I'll get into that later. So this is the time. When is the best time to talk about reparations? It's always the best time. It's always the best time. Now is the best time. Until it get done, now is the best time. Now I'm not the expert on this. You got to talk to my man, Antonio Moore, Yvette Carnell. You need to go check out Breaking Brown and their ADOS agenda. Matter of fact, they have a website, and I'll be showing you that website. This should be a pillar in every politician platform who wants to get black vote. Oh, now you're scared. Now you upset because black folks saying they're going to hold their votes from the Democratic Party. I understand you're nervous, but you ain't got to be nervous. All you have to do is work on your politicians to support the agenda. Now we're going to talk about the mechanics of this, and I don't have the mechanics, but just some basic common sense about this situation. But before we go in there, we're going to hear what a couple of politicians that's running for office got to say about that. Now, I did a video on Julian Castro and his decision concerning reparation. Castro did the right thing. He didn't blow the newsman off saying, what does it look like? What is it? No, he's saying, I'll always believe that this right should be dealt with. And I said, once I get in office, I'm going to get a task force to look into it. But he said, we can't go any further in this country until we right this wrong. So at least he made a foundation for it. Now, some people say that's not good enough. That's when Julian Castro need to get with the people who are pushing this movement to gain an understanding instead of acting like he know it all. Because we got people already know what need to be done to implement this thing. You just got to get your butt over there with them to learn how to do it. And it's not hard. The struggle is you willing to give up your stance on this. Now, all right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into this and we'll take a look at this right now. Just give me a moment.
Reparations for black people.
Well, listen, again, we had over 200 years of slavery. We had Jim Crow for almost a century. We had legalized discrimination and segregation, and now we have segregation and discrimination that's illegal but still exists and is a barrier to progress. We have disparities around housing. We have disparities around education. We have disparities around income. And we have to recognize that everybody did not start out on an equal footing in this country. And in particular, black people have not.
All right, so let's stop this for a second. Every black person in America knows about the disparities. Every black person knows about the inequality, and that is why they're on this subject. Your talking points that all these politicians keep raising up has already been said over and over again. That's just you just trying to show your so-called knowledge on the subject, but the disparities cannot come from a progressive plank for black people. And I'm going to talk about that in a few minutes. Why? Now, like I said, I'm not the expert on this, but I do have some common sense on this. And these are common sense things. Let me keep going.
And so we have got to recognize that and do something about that and give folks a lift up. That's why, for example, I'm proposing the LIFT Act. Give people who are making $100,000 or less as a family a tax credit, which will benefit and uplift 60% of black families who are in poverty.
So by...
All right, so her idea of reparations is a tax cut, a lift, $500 a month, according to what she said. This should equal out to $500 a month. $500 a month times 12 is about $6,000, right? You think that's going to deal with the income disparities in America? No, that's exactly what it is, a lift. It's not putting you on even plane. It's just a lift up. And like she said, anybody that's making less than $100,000 is going to get this lift up. But there's a lot of people, Ms. Harris, there's more people in America, non-black, where their salaries is $60,000, $75,000, $85,000, $95,000, and the difference between the two to the average black person is too much of a wealth gap. So you think that tax credit is going to actually lift them up to that same level? See, this is what we're talking about. We're not talking about your policies that's going to benefit everybody and all ties lift boats. Do those policies, but you got to separate this. This is a whole different direction that we're going. We're talking about giving us this and that, because we need that to come up to the same level. And then if you want to give us a lift after that, give us a lift. Be a taxi. Be a friend and give us a lift. Let me keep going.
Default, it affects black families, but there's not a particular policy for African Americans that you would explore.
But no, if you look at the reality of who will benefit from certain policies, when you take into account that they're not starting at the same place and they're not starting on equal footing, it will directly benefit black children, black families, black homeowners.
It would definitely benefit us. We do not dispute that, but it doesn't put us on even plane as the average white citizen. We're not asking to be above white society. We want to be on the same playing field as white society. We want to have the same true economic benefits of white society. That's the gap that we need to deal with, and your LIFT program ain't gonna do that, because as you lift us up, you're gonna lift them up, and they still gonna be in the same position that they always been in, and we're still gonna be in the same position as we've always been in. We're just gonna have your little tax credit to help us all out, but they still gonna be on top, and that is exactly what you don't get that, Miss Harris,
Because the disparities are so significant. So if we focus on the specific issues that have resulted in the greatest disparities, and we understand that that's part of why we're doing it. Listen, the reality also is this: any policy that will benefit black people will benefit all of society. Let's be clear about that. Let's really be clear about that.
There you go with that. That's that. A rising tide lifts all boats, and that has been one of my favorite phrases, and that's what most progressive policies do. But we're not talking about that. Yes, if you give us health care, single-payer health care, it will benefit black people. We'll agree with that, but yet it'll benefit everybody else. That's great. No-cost education is for all. That's great. I can go on and on and on, but still there is a gap. And that gap needs to be closed. The opportunity gap, the wealth gap, the community gap. And there's some things you just can't give reparations to fix. But this has nothing to do with your policies concerning LIFT or Medicare for all. I'm for all that. But that is for all people. And sure, we will benefit from that. But that's it. We'll benefit. We need more than a lift. We need a rocket.
So I'm not going to sit here and say I'm going to do something that's only going to benefit black people.
That's where you messed up, and that is why black people are tuning you out right now, because you sound like Obama saying, I'm not going to do just something that's going to only benefit black people. Barack Obama did stuff to benefit only lesbian, gays, and homosexuals. Barack Obama did things that benefit the Hispanic community, specific things. So why can't you do something for your so-called own people, your African diaspora? The ones you claim that you're one of us. That's why you got to look at this charlatan, this fake, this fraud. She would do something that's specific for black people, put a whole bunch of them in jail and sell them out to the prison complex. But they won't. But she can't give you some specific policies to lift up the black community other than the LIFT program, which lift up all community. Like I said, great job, Kamala Harris. Do that. But we still need something separate from that to get us an even feel or on the level of white society, and reparations does that.
No, because whatever benefits that black family will benefit that community and society as a whole and the country, right?
No, and that's why you will never ever get my vote, because you are not. Anybody who's looking at this fraud for president, man, you need your brain examined. Now let's take a look at Marion Wilson. Marion Wilson is a very interesting candidate. I've been following Marion Wilson for quite a while because I teach on the subject of love. If you get a chance, you can go from a spiritual perspective. You can get a chance, you can go to my YouTube channel called Winning with Love with Bobby. And there I teach principles on loving one another, loving yourself, and loving things that are bigger than you, and even loving things that are beneath you or so-called beneath you. So I've been watching Marion for a while. She's a very great personal development expert. If you want to grow as a person individually and spiritually, she is a good person to listen to. As a candidate, I try to separate that. I see a little bit of that in certain candidates like Tulsi Gabbard and even Marianne Williamson, a heart of compassion. But it still go back to principles and policies. Now, I'm going to play this video and let her explain her stance on reparations. She had this reparations stance before she ran for office. Okay, she always thought this. This is not new to Marianne Wilson. She's not doing this to get black votes. She always thought reparations should be done by the United States to make them become more of a better, compassionate country. But let me let her talk.
The same psychological and emotional and spiritual forces that prevail within the journey of an individual prevail within the journey of a nation, because all that a nation is a collection of individuals. So if you're clued in as to what changes one life, you're clued in as to what changes the world. And what we know is that in order to transform a life, you can't just change things on the outside. You have to change things on the inside too. And among other things, you have to be very clear, brutally honest with yourself about your character defects. You have to be willing to atone, you have to be willing to make amends, and you have to be willing to change. It's time for the United States to do the same in some areas where we have character defects as a nation, in areas where we have not lived, either in the past or in the present, as who we say that we are. We have not lived, and we are not living on the principles on which we purport to stand. One of these areas is the issue of race. Now, we had slavery in the United States, obviously. We abolished slavery. But at the end of the Civil War in 1865, even though 40 acres and a mule was promised by General Sherman to every formerly enslaved person, in most cases, that acreage and that mule were not given, and even in the cases where they were, in most cases, they were then taken away. What that means is that full economic integration into the new condition of freedom was never achieved. In fact, quite the opposite.
Now, fascinating candidate, very factual on the history. Even then, the ones who were given 40 acres and a mule had it taken away from them. Well, let me continue.
Throughout the American South, black code laws were passed, which were to ensure the subjugation of the formerly enslaved population. John Birch Society, Ku Klux Klan, lynchings, the institutionalization of white supremacy and segregation. And those horrors, that next phase of violence against black people in America, was not fundamentally addressed until the 1960s and the Civil Rights Movement. And once again, was progress achieved? Yes, progress was achieved, but we have not finished the job of full reconciliation. Not only that, in many ways we have slid backwards. We have actually chipped away at the Voting Rights Act. Mass incarceration is a horrifying example of an institutionalized racial discrimination in criminal sentencing. We have a problem in our times, and we need to address this problem, not just in incremental ways, but in fundamental ways. I propose a plan for reparations for slavery. Just as the German nation has paid $89 billion in reparations to Jewish organizations since World War II, and just as the United States has paid $20,000 in reparations to descendants of those who were in Japanese internment camps during World War II, I propose a $100 billion plan of reparations to be paid over 10 years. I submit that we should choose a council of esteemed African American leaders.
Now, she got one thing wrong. It's more than $1 billion. 100 billion is, at least she got a number. The rest of them don't know what the heck they're talking about. And but at least she got a number. At least she has a plan over 10 years. But Marianne Wilson was confronted by Yvette Cornell and Antonio about the number, and they told her in her face, baby, you got to step that number up, because $100 billion is nothing compared to how many black people in this community, or how many people that are ADOS, the $100 billion is nothing. You got to step that number up, because with just the value of the promise of 40 acres and a mule, it would be in the trillions. So this number need to be in the trillions just to start with. Now you can go back to the disseminated within a 10-year time frame, but this thing need to be in the trillions. Now Marianne Wilson got the right idea about what it looked like. For those people who say, well, what does reparation look like? That's not a factor of what it looked like. It's about what it is.
Who were given over a 10-year period $10 billion a year, and this money should be dispersed as they deem most appropriate in order for economic and educational revitalization to be achieved within the Black community. It's time.
Now, like I said, don't need to be billions. It's trillions, really, Marianne Wilson. But her having working with those who are experts at this should be involved or leading this effort. Nobody else should be leading this effort. ADOS and the experts in the ADOS community should be leading this effort on the number and how it's distributed.
Democratic presidential candidate Bernie Sanders caused a stir when he stated he does not support reparations for slavery on the grounds that such a program would be very divisive and would never pass Congress. Hillary Clinton, when asked, never gave a straight answer, instead suggested that money should be invested in funding underprivileged neighborhoods. However, both have a history in reparations for a certain group, Holocaust survivors. Sanders sponsored a bill, but it never came up for a vote.
You hear that? Both Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders didn't find no issue with reparations for Holocaust survivors. See, the thing is, when you're not one of us, how can you understand our need for this? Because you're not one of us. And the same thing go to my white counterparts, my brothers and sisters of Caucasian persuasion. You know I love you. You know I got nothing, and I treat you like my own brother and sister. You know I love you. But if you never been through what we've been through, if you never sat there and if you never took the time to really go through a real deal Black history class, if you never actually lived in areas where you were thrown on the ground, put a knee to the back of your head just because you're Black, when you call niggers, and there goes my monetization so people donate to my GoFundMe account, so I can say what I want to say. When you've been chased by racist rednecks down in Florida, because I have. Not all of them are racist, but I've been chased. I've been called names. I've been told I was in the wrong neighborhood. I've been told I had to, if I don't get out of here, they're going to hang me. I've been jumped on. I had to fight 6 guys one time. And I tried my best to beat they behind, but they just overpowered me. So when you're in that position as a white person, then you can tell me you understand what you're going through. But the reason Bernie Sanders, and I like Bernie, I never really liked Hillary Clinton. But when you're in a position where you don't understand, just because you marched with us, don't mean you understand what we consistently go through every day. Because at the end of the day, you can go into your white neighborhood and in Black neighborhoods and still get some kind of level of respect. But I can't just do that in any old white neighborhood. You know, I love to go look at beautiful homes. And sometimes I like to park my car. I used to put my son in the stroller and we would walk down Masters Lane in Virginia Beach and look at the beautiful homes and things like that. And boy, the looks that we would get, just me and my son enjoying success, trying to get our mind on success, and me trying to instill in him, you can have this. Because this is America, right? And how they were looking at us and how the cops was riding around 4 or 5 times just checking us out as if I'm going to break into somebody's house with my little boy who is disabled with psoriasis, with paralysis, like I'm going to break into somebody's house. Anyway, that's another subject. So let me go back and let you hear what they just said.
Sanders sponsored a bill and reparations for a certain group, Holocaust survivors. Sanders sponsored a bill, but it never came up for a vote. Clinton is also on the same page as Sanders. During her husband's administration, she was given an award by the World Jewish Congress for helping obtain reparations from the Swiss and German governments.
A lot of African Americans are starting to call for reparations for the many years of stolen labor through slavery. Is that something that you would support as president?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I think it would be, first of all, its likelihood of getting through a Congress.
But you were willing to come up with a bill that's going to help the Jewish culture. And I believe for the Holocaust, they deserve reparations. But you can do that, but you're going to blow us off like that, man? Don't get me wrong, Sanders, I love you, but you got to come out of your own ambitions for this White House and your own ambition to try to fix society. And I'm all for that, but you can't neglect a certain segment of your society that's screaming in your face that, look, you can support this. The nuance of it, you can worry about that later. Were you worried about the nuance of that bill that you did for Holocaust survivors? Let me keep going.
Is nil. Second of all, I think it would be, very divisive. I think the real issue is when we look at...
How would it be divisive? Did you say that when you wrote that bill for the Jewish people? Who said it will be divisive? Sure, you're going to have some racist people on the right that, that's going to be upset. And for the so-called progressives in the Democratic Party and non-party affiliates, the true progressive, they shouldn't be upset because you're progressives, right? You should be for this. You should be for righting wrong, right? You want the black people to support the women's movement. You want the black people to support the LGBT community. You want black people to support DACA and things like that. But you can't get behind this. This has got to be a divisive issue. This don't have to be a divisive issue. Let me keep going.
The poverty rate among the African American community, when we look at the high unemployment rate within the African American community, the incarceration rate within the African American community, we have a lot of work to do. So I think what we should be talking about is making massive investments in rebuilding our cities, in creating millions of decent paying jobs, in making public colleges and universities tuition free, and working on childcare. Basically, targeting our federal resources to the areas that it is needed the most. And where it is needed the most are in impoverished communities, often African American and Latino.
Now, sure. Putting money in the communities will help the black community if they put the money in the black communities. But you got to understand, black community is not just black community anymore because we have whites in our community. We have Hispanics in our community. We got some Asians in our community. So there's really not that many so-called white communities, black communities. And the black communities that we used to have has been pimped off the gentrification. No, they're not going in burning the town and killing everybody in the town that's black and then taking over and rebuilding on top of that. They're not doing that because that's what they used to do in the past. No, they just legally going to city council and, and doing that. That is not enough. ADOS has nothing to do with that. And for you to assume this is going to be a divisive issue. It's only a divisive issue in your party because you need the black vote. You need it. And sure, like I say, I believe Bernie, he has the power to get a bunch of independents, some Republican, and he only need half the Democratic vote. But why should you just settle for that? You want a blowout, man, you got to listen to the needs of black America and don't blow them all and don't assume that you know everything about it. How do you know it's going to be a divisive issue? And was it divisive when you were talking about the Jews? Did the black people get upset when you seek to help out the Jewish people? No. Most black people believe Jewish people should get something for the Holocaust, but they believe they should get something for their Holocaust. Let me keep going.
Thank you, Senator Sanders. Part of the legacy of slavery and Jim Crow in the U.S. is the legacy of income inequality in the U.S. What is your position on reparations to the descendants of slaves?
Well, as I just indicated, there are massive disparities that must be addressed. There is legislation that I like, introduced by Congressman Jim Clyburn. It's called the 10-20-30 legislation. which focuses federal resources in a very significant way on distressed communities, communities that have high levels of poverty.
This is Bernie Sanders' answer for reparation. John Conyers' bill basically say we want to pass this bill so we can look into this thing. Same thing that Castro said, and putting funding into distressed communities. That's great. But we're not talking about putting money just in the distressed community to build the communities up, because what normally happens when all this money comes into the community, you look at Harlem. You have people like Charlie Ringo and the whole 9 yards, and back in the day, Adam Clayton Powell, all of them fought to get funding into Harlem. And Harlem began to grow and prosper. And now, right now, soon as it get to a level where it started to grow and prosper, here come the efforts of regenifying the whole place. I got a friend of mine who right now, and she has a Jewish landlord, is really putting the pressure on her to get out of that apartment because he wants to make those apartments into condos where he can get paid $1 million per apartment with the little renovations. Want to push these people out. So the federal funding going into the black community is not enough, because what normally happens once that money comes to the community do get a little lift. But after a while, here come these big time people from all over the world trying to buy that area up. And they're slipping money to city council and things like that to make that happen. Let me keep going.
So as I've just indicated, I think we have to do everything that we can to end institutional racism in this country. It is not acceptable to me that the rate of childhood poverty among the African American community is over 30% in this country. That is beyond belief. That African Americans die from cancer at higher rates than whites. So we're going to do everything we can to put resources into distressed communities and improve lives for those people who have been hurt from the legacy of slavery.
All right. Now, like I said, that's all great. I'm all for that, Bernie Sanders. And I hope you win and you do that. But still, the African American community, or the black community, or the indigenous, the native indigenous, because a lot of people, black people who were Indians, end up being sold into slavery and were treated as if they were black. They became slaves, so that will make them American descendants of slaves. If you can, and we'll talk about a little more on what does that look like and how do you figure out whether you're really American descendant of slave or not. We're going to deal with that in a moment. But that's a given in every community. You want to put funding in every community. But that is not enough. And it really gets me how they spit off statistics. We know the statistics. Thank you for reminding us, Bernie Sanders. Thank you for reminding us, Kamala Harris. We already know the statistics. That's why we're making a demand that not only you do something about leveling those statistics, but reparations will level those statistics.
What is your position specifically on reparations? I asked the question because Elizabeth Warren, Julian Castro, they've indicated they want
to support. What does that mean? What do they mean? I'm not sure that anyone's very clear. What I've just said is that I think we must do everything that we can to address the massive level of disparity that exists in this country.
I'll tell you.
That has nothing to do with reparations, Mr. Sanders. That's just doing right by black people, doing right by Hispanic people. You're just doing something that's a given. Will that put them on an even plane with the people who enslaved them? I mean, my whole thing is people need to have the same level of opportunities, and they don't. Right now, black Americans are at the bottom of that totem pole. Everybody come to this country, they get a better shot than we do. The Nigerians come here and get a better shot than we do oftentimes. The Europeans better shot, the Asians a better shot. Yet we're at the bottom of the totem pole, Mr. Sanders.
What they mean, because Elizabeth Warren has said black families have had a much steeper hill to climb. We need systematic structural changes to address that. Julian Castro has said, I have long thought that this country would be better off if we did find a way to do that. Reparations.
Well, I agree with what Elizabeth said.
So you would support reparations?
But read what she said. What does that mean? She means, I think, I don't want to put words into her mouth, is what I said.
All right, so Bernie Sanders is going to over and over let you know what he believes reparation is. That's okay, but that is not reparations. All right, so let's keep going. Let's keep going. And I know this is kind of long, and I may chop this up into two parts, part 1, part A, and part B. Your whole platform is what they call fairy tales and unicorns when you ran in 2016. $15 an hour was a fairy tale. How do you do that? How are you going to make that happen? You didn't let that stop you. Medicare for all. That's a fantasy. You mean everybody get health care right at the point of service? How are you going to do that? You didn't let that stop you. You still declared it. Same thing for no-cost education. Right now, $15 an hour is trending all over the place. New York City has it. A lot of places had it because you put it out there first, and then you moved on it. People went to work on it. You voice your support. You put it out there. Same thing with no-cost education. Now, this is my last piece I'm going to show, and then we're going to go into some nuances, and then we'll be done. So just thank you for hanging in there with me. Now, here we go.
Reparations. It's a term you've likely heard before, but what does it mean? It's a type of compensation given to a group of people who've suffered abuse at the hands of a more powerful group.
Now, Bernie Sanders, there's your definition for what reparations is. What is that? We didn't ask you what it looks like, or what is that going to look like, or what's that is later. The mechanics of it, you worry about that later. You need to go ahead and say, I'm going to build this first. And then you go get the things that you need to build.
In the U.S., it's often talked about in terms of slavery. But slavery was so long ago, and some ask, why should Black Americans be compensated now? Well, proponents argue that the U.S. was built on the backs of slaves, and all our social institutions continue to reinforce rigid economic inequalities against Blacks. It's easy to see why. From slavery, white families got rich, bought land, and cemented legacies, while Black families were torn apart and kept in extreme poverty. From the dawn of America, the starting line for Blacks was far behind the white majority. The Emancipation Proclamation did little to end the racial stigma of being Black in America, and even less to ensure that ex-slaves could access the immense wealth that white America had accumulated off their labor. While all Americans of all backgrounds are deemed equal under the law, equality also means equal access to economic opportunity, healthcare, property, education, and justice. Black people have been systematically denied these things for the past 150 years. And not just by Jim Crow laws in the South. Every major American social institution has roots in slavery. The U.S. school system is still unequal and unofficially segregated. Teachers in minority schools make less money and are less likely to be certified. Black students are often at a disadvantage from day one, and fewer Black boys graduate from high school. 60% of people behind bars in the U.S. are people of color, and Black men are close to 6 times more likely than white men to go to prison. Housing discrimination continues as well. Thanks to old techniques like redlining, which deny home loans and insurance to people living in certain areas, and predatory lending, Blacks have been forced to live in low-income neighborhoods and denied the chance to own homes. Oh, and then there's life expectancy. Black men die on average 5 years earlier than white men. The infant mortality rate for Black babies is more than twice that of whites. Socioeconomic factors like diet, lifestyle, and lack of preventative care all come into play here. So you'd think all of this might make our nation's leaders want to have a discussion about reparations, but you'd be wrong. Congressman John Conyers Jr. has been introducing the same bill for 25 years, calling for a commission to discuss reparations. It's been shot down every time. And while there are many obstacles in the way of distributing reparations, it's not impossible. Take Germany, South Africa, and Chile, all countries that have given reparations to groups of people their governments mistreated. And even here in the US, reparations have happened. In 1988, the U.S. began the process of reparations for more than 100,000 surviving Japanese Americans that were placed in incarceration camps during World War II. Reparations don't have to be monetary. They can be commissions for collective healing, investment in underdeveloped neighborhoods, access to skills training, or even major legal reforms. There are, of course, many questions, like who would get compensated and what specific problems would be solved. Reparations don't right the wrongs of the past, nor are they a means by which the conditions of people who've been grossly abused are somehow magically fixed. But in a country where the government has yet to formally apologize for slavery, something that began 400 years ago, isn't it time to start talking about what can be done to heal those wounds?
Now, that was an excellent segment on the subject of reparations and the history that leads up to this point right now. That was excellent on behalf of American Justice. Go ahead and check out their website. Any video clips, YouTube is under the fair use law. All right, so hold your horses, bruh. All right, so now I'm going to go into some nuances a little bit, and then we're done. Give me a second. All right, so what you see here is Jill Stein's platform. Jill Stein was the front runner in the Green Party, and this was her platform. This platform was Bernie Sanders' platform on steroids. A lot of things in this platform the Democratic Party is trying to co-opt. This is part of my platform. These are some of the things I believe. Green New Deal. Now, look. Have anybody said anything about how that's going to happen? No, we had all these people sign on for the Green New Deal, and they don't know how that's going to look or what's going to happen or none of that stuff. They only got a resolution. And you trying to tell me you can't do that for reparations? We will set the federal minimum wage at $15. We'll make public colleges free as a right. Here's the beautiful one. That's beautiful. We'll cancel student debt to $42 million like we did for Wall Street. That was the Green Party platform. And yet, the Democratic Party tried to make a mockery out of Jill Stein, and they did whatever they can to shut her voice down because this platform made Bernie Sanders' platform look stupid. Yet this woman, this great lady, decided to open up her candidacy to Bernie Sanders because she knew the Democratic Party was going to screw Bernie Sanders. She knew they was going to pull the switch on him and not going to let him become president because you cannot win in an opposition party. They're anti-progressive. They're pretty much middle-of-the-road Republicans, lightweight Republicans. So you don't think that may not happen this year? Well, we fix all the systemic issue. You don't know that. Yet, if you look down here, let me see. There is a platform for, all right, let me find it. We will make reparations for slavery and injustices to Native Americans, because we're not discounting Native Americans. They've been through a lot too. They were brutalized and taken over and raped and stolen too. But that's not the focus now, because they got some things. They didn't get enough of what they need, but at least they got something. Black people didn't get anything. Sure, you changed some of the laws, you made civil rights good, and you passed some policies to try to help give us a lift. But no, we're talking about reparations. We're talking about being placed on equal footing with white America. And most people don't want to hear that. And you got some people that's so racist, they're gonna fight you on this. Well, there's gonna have to be a fight, Doc. It's gonna have to be a fight. Nobody's trying to be better. Nobody's trying to be above. We're talking about true equality, true equal rights. But she was for reparations. Not only was she for reparations, she wanted to end. You got to read her whole platform. Let me get off this. I don't want to get too detailed in her platform. I'm going to read a couple things and some notes that I took earlier today about my point of view on reparations. Now, before I go into that, I'm going to go on the screenshot again. And I want you to take some time to go to ADOS101.com. And it's the website of the American Descendant of Slavery. These are the founders, Yvette Carnell of Breaking Brown. You ought to go check out our show. And Antonio Moore. He hosts a weekly radio show on Dash Radio. Great show. If you want to know a little more about ADOS, here it is. You can go into the detail, the racial wealth gap, the whole 9 yards. The study is there, where black people is and white people are. I can go through this, but you take some time. From 1600, 1900s, we haven't gained that much. We've gotten something, but not that much. There's a chart on racial wealth inequality and how rampant it is in the United States, and how it's going to go by 2024. He has a chart on median household network by races and education, the difference between black and white. These are the studies that are out there. Median household network for races and employment status again. So the study is out there. Then you get to know a little more about the black agenda, the agenda that they're going to talk about to all these politicians. So instead of asking these questions, why don't you go look at the website and study it? They're going to have a conference coming up soon. Now, this conference has been open to every politician running for office. They invited Marion Wilson, who been on their show and talked about reparation and what she would do and how she believed it can happen. So what's wrong with the rest of them? They invited Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders yet to accept the invitation. Why? Who knows? Then, like I said, a little history about the founders. All right. Now, why Bernie Sanders won't take time out to go to the ADOS conference. This is what, let me go into some details on some things, some notes that I wrote. Now, you're not going to convince Black America to step down on this issue. It ain't going nowhere. It is going to be the decision maker for a lot of blacks in America on whether the Democratic Party, whoever running in the Democratic Party, going to win their primary. So whoever's running in the primaries, you better wake the heck up, because they're not going back on this. They're not going to calm down. They're not going to shut up. This is serious with them. You have to listen to them. It don't matter who you are, Bernie Sanders, Kamala Harris. You have to go to the leaders of this movement and listen to them. Hear from them and take advice from them. Now, I know it freaks a lot of you Bernie 2020ers. And I know it freaks out those who only thing they want to do is remove Trump. We got to do whatever we need to do to remove Trump. This is crazy. Y'all crazy. Call us whatever we want to be. I support the movement. My vote is precious. You already know I'm not just going to give you my vote. And beautiful as Bernie Sanders' platform is, I still got issues with 2016. How he didn't even call out the injustices on the voting process. How he didn't call out he didn't do what Trump did. And I'm not tooting Trump horn, but if those Republicans think they was going to screw Trump over, Trump will go blast them out. Bernie Sanders could have did the same thing and let it be known so they didn't screw him over. So I'm still trying to build trust in Bernie Sanders to even consider voting for him. One thing will get my consideration a little, that may get my consideration a little way on it, is him making Nina Turner his vice president. And Nina Turner need to get with him about this situation, because this affects Nina Turner too. Nina Turner need to be in his ear about this, since this is going to make the decision on whether he's going to win the black vote or not. Now, I know some of us black people still going to vote for him anyway, but there's a lot that ain't going to vote for him. And you don't tell them what to do. You don't own their mind. You don't own their thought. Better get an understanding on why, and try to communicate with them and learn from them. Now, to believe this is a Democratic talking point against Sanders is dumb. Because before Sanders got in the race, this question was out there. This movement was out there. These people are talking to every person running for office, and that's why they're talking about it now. Because they were not talking about it before until they realized how many people are signing on this movement. So this ain't about Bernie Sanders. I know you think it's going to derail his presidency, and it may. It may derail him going into the primaries. Then he need to do what he need to do. Get with the people at ADOS. Get with the professionals who've been studying this thing for a long time, that's been pushing this a long time. Develop a panel and get to work on this. Don't just blow this thing off. To believe this is a Democratic talking point against Sanders is a little selfish to believe that. Because it ain't got nothing to do with Sanders. It's bigger than Sanders. Yeah, there's things that's more important than Sanders. But if we get Sanders in office, he can deal with those situations. Yeah, we thought Obama was going to do that too. We don't know until he get in office. In the meantime, Sanders need to move on our end. We always talk about how the Democratic Party need to move with the alignment or align with the progressives, but now progressives act like they can't align with people who are going to support the things that they believe in. Progressives should be for this. To believe this is a Democratic talking point against Sanders is selfish and make it appear that you care more about putting somebody in office than giving ADOS the justification it needs. These people talking about saving their lives because the gap is just getting bigger and bigger. It's not closing up. And Bernie Sanders' policies that he has right now is not enough to close that gap. It's just a Band-Aid on an open wound. It'll help a little bit, but it doesn't close the gap. And they agree with things like single payer, Medicare for all. They agree with no cost education. They believe we should fix our broken immigration system and our justice system. They do believe in the Green New Deal and all those policy planks in the progressive progressive movement. But to tell them to wait until we get this man in office before you start talking about reparations, that's the same thing FDR told W.E.B. Du Bois and all the other black voices during that time who pleaded with FDR to help the black community in the situation they in. FDR told them, wait, let me get this Green New Deal passed, and it passed. And some of the things that were in the New Deal did help the black community economically. And I'm quite sure some of the things that Bernie Sanders do will help the black community economically. But yet at the same time, while they had good jobs, while they was driving Cadillacs or whatever kind of car they would drive, while they had their home, they still had their own separate neighborhoods that oftentimes got invaded by Ku Klux Klan. Oftentimes houses got burned up and everything. They still dealt with that harsh racism even during the New Deal era. They still had to deal with that hatred and that racism. Some of you say, well, why are blacks crying reparations now? In the most important election in our lifetime. Of course, we hear that all the time. This is the most important election of our lifetime, and it may be. Blacks have always demanded this. Always. Always. You just haven't heard it on this level because now we got social media. And the mere fact that it was hard to get blacks as a collective to be part of something, and now it's freaking a lot of people out, especially in white America. Blacks been doing this for a long time. Back then, the only bullhorns we had were non-apologetic activists like Dr. Martin Luther King, Marcus Garvey. People who wasn't even ADOS came to our aid in Jim Crow era. Malcolm X, Adam Clayton Powell. I can go on and on and on. Voices of justice during that time. But now we got the internet and we got voices. Now, I'm not an expert on this, but I am a strong vocal voice on this subject. And I may lose some subscribers. I didn't get in this for the subscribers. I get into this because I want to see all people come up, but I want to make sure that the ones who've been pushed down and stepped on get their just rewards. Yeah, I will focus on them, unlike Kamala Harris. No, I'm focusing on the black community. Black community need to get their just due reward. Should anyone running for office support reparations? Let me say it this way. You have to. If you really want to win your primary, you have to support it. You have to support it. Well, how do candidates show their support? What do they supposed to say? What do they have to have a platform? Do they have to have a document showing how this thing going to happen? Nobody. No, stop making this thing complicated. It's not that complicated. One thing that a candidate can do is not blow this off as if you don't know what reparations is. You could say that you support reparations. You can say, I believe and I support the United States of America making amends for the wrong done by paying money and other things to help those who have been wronged. You can say that. Bernie Sanders could say that. Bernie Sanders could have said, and any other politician can, because that is what the definition of reparations is. Bernie Sanders could say, yeah, I support reparations. I believe and support the United States making amends for the wrong done by paying money to the black community, helping those who have been wrong in the black community. In the African American, I got to be specific. I can't just say black, because you ain't going to just be able to come into this ADOS movement without being ADOS. And there are certain things that you have to do to prove that you're ADOS before you can even thinking about participating in reparations, like going through your lineage, proving that you come from the descendants of slaves. You ain't going to just be coming in saying, I want my reparations, and you're not a part of this. There's ways to find out whether you're really a descendant of slaves. That's all you need to say. Now, what it'll look like. A lot of people say, well, what do reparations look like? Don't need to go there. All right. Now, we all know what it looked like. Now, what a politician can say is, I believe in this. I support this. Matter of fact, I'm going to find some way right now to develop a task force of African Americans that have studied this subject, that already been working on plans on how this thing can take place. I'm going to bring them into it, my fold on my campaign trail, and we're going to discuss this, especially in the black community. I guarantee you, Bernie Sanders did not get the edge that he needed because he didn't do whatever he can to really communicate to the black community. And most of the black communities in the South already voted for that, and they were familiar with Hillary than him. So, of course, they didn't trust him. He can build his trust right now, and I shouldn't be giving nobody no ideas, by developing a reparations committee or a reparation task force or a reparation team that knows about reparations, to have them come out and talk about not only him and his campaign supporting it, but how this thing can happen once he becomes president. You don't need to know. You don't need to know everything, Mr. Sanders. There are people who know this that you could put on your team. I'm going to develop a task force on reparations, and I'm going to establish this now before I become president. I don't need to wait because I want to know how we can help out black communities. Now, you could be bold like that. Marianne Williamson was gutsy and bold enough to talk about, I want reparation, billions in reparation for black people. How it's disseminated, I got people who I'm going to work with to teach me how to disseminate it the right way. And I guarantee you, it's not going to be people from the white community. It's people from the black community. And then a lot of people say, oh, it's divisive. It's not that divisive. It's not divisive at all. Most progressive, if they believe in progressing, they support it. Most Democrats, they believe in democracy, they'll support it. Are we worried about the Republicans? Some Republicans believe in it too. So stop assuming, stop trying to blow this thing off as if your mindset is not everybody's mindset concerning this presidential candidates. That's why there's experts that you need to bring into your organization to establish the what, why, and when. But you still can declare that you're for it. Now, I mean, it's been done before. Like as the lady said, there was reparation for Holocaust victims. There was reparation for those who was in internment camps. There was reparation for people that suffered from apartheid. I mean, so instead of saying, I don't know how this goes, why don't you get with those people and find out how you implement it? Just like for those people who say, how can we get Medicare for all? You get with the people who've done Medicare for all for their country, and they'll teach you how to do it. You get with the people who've done reparations, they'll teach you how to do it. It's simple. Don't blow it off. Just say you're for it if you're for it. If you're not, if you don't believe black people deserve a just reward, just say it so we won't vote for your butt. Because it shows you don't care. And stop using what it looked like in the implementation as an excuse for not supporting it. Most people don't know what the Green New Deal, implementing the Green New Deal looked like, but we supported, signed a resolution for it. And it don't have a chance of passing Congress either. Right now, Medicare for all, we don't know the nuances of it. Yet we can learn from other countries who've done it. Yet right now it has no chance of passing in Congress. But you still declare it, you still push it. Why got to be any different for ADOS and reparations? Most of the good progressive policies do help out the black community, but it will never bridge the wealth gap because the wealth gap will still be there even with the lift up, even with the guaranteed minimum wage, and all that. It's still going to be a wealth gap because we haven't did what needed to be done to bridge the wealth gap between blacks and whites. You got to understand, slaves came here with nothing. Butt ball naked in a ship. Those who did came. I believe some black people were already here. They were just black Indians. And some of them got traded into slavery or kidnapped into slavery. Because a lot of people ran away and got kidnapped into slavery. There's people today getting kidnapped and being brought into slavery. But most other cultures didn't go through this. So they don't understand why we're asking for this. The Irish came across the water. The Greeks, some Russians, you name it. The Spanish, you name it. Came to America through Ellis Island. Their experience of racism is never on the level of the experience of racism with the black community. So we don't expect a lot of people not to understand our cry or our demand. Because we're not crying, it's a demand now. We used to cry. Again, things like a livable wage, Green New Deal, Medicare for all. We all know what the end result is. We all know the costs of most of these things. Yet we still declare it. We still want it. We even have people sign on for it. But we don't know what it actually looked like. We don't know the nuances, and we know it's still not going to pass Congress at this moment. So using that as an excuse for not supporting reparations is lame. Some of you saying, how do you determine who is a true American descendant of slave? Well, like I said, go back to tracing your lineage, your history, your family tree. And there's ways of doing that. Like I said, I'm not the professional on this subject. I just support it. That's why you got to go to the ADOS conference. But that's once we get this mandated, once we get this out here. How will the trillions of dollars, because right now the money that's owed to Black America is in the trillions, not in the billions. It's in the trillions. Well, how will the trillions be demonstrated? Or how are you going to implement these policies? Well, you don't say that with the other programs. You don't talk about how healthcare will be distributed, how the Green New Deal will be implemented. You don't talk about these things. But yet, that's not going to stop you from talking about it in the future. You made your declaration, you support it, and then once you get enough, once you rally for it and get people on board it, and then you push to pass it, then you're going to go ahead and worry about those nuances concerning it. So my whole point, and I'm done with this, is, yes, this shouldn't be a divisive issue. America have to right the wrong. They have to. And I agree with Julian Castro. The country will never be able to go forward until we fix this situation. You cannot just say, you don't have to say, you don't have to have the nuances of the situation right now. And there are people who have the answers to the nuances. All you have to do is say, yeah, I support ADOS getting their just due reward. It's time. They should have got that a long time ago. And one of the reasons why they're going through the hell and high water they're going through now to this very day is because that which was promised to bring them up, to give them the same advantage as anybody else, never was given to them. And they the one built this country. We just gave them the blueprint, but they built it. So the blueprinter and the builders should get the same. They should be on even playing field. And I'm going to build a task force, and I'm going to work with this task force now so we can go out there and talk to Black America on how I want to do whatever I can to give them the reparations they deserve. You will get the Black vote. And yet at the same time, you're still going to get the normal votes that you're normally going to get for Medicare for all, single payer, no cost education, a minimum wage, a livable wage with increases based on inflation and things like that. You're still going to get that. So I'm done. My whole point of this is there's no excuse for any Democrat or any independent that claims to be progressive not to support the ADOS movement. There's no excuses from you not going to the ADO website and get educated about it. Stop asking all these questions and listen to some of these people talk. Go listen to Yvette Carnell's Breaking Brown. Go listen to Antonio Tone talk. Go listen to his show so you can get a little education. There's other people who's been studying this subject for a long time. Go listen to them. Get educated. These people have the knowledge on the implications, the implementation of this plan if it was to go forward. Right now, we just need support. Just like people needed support for the Green New Deal, just like the little kids went and asked Nancy Pelosi for the Green New Deal, which they should. We need to have Black kids asking people to sign on to reparations. There's no excuses for blowing this off. Don't blow this off. Don't you dare. Now, you get a chance to go to my nephew, LB the Surrealist. He talks about this on his latest episode, too. It was an excellent episode. Go and watch that. Tim Black talked about it, too. Go watch that. Now, again, I'm not an expert on this, but I am a supporter, and I know some things. I know you not supporting this, yet you're going to want the Black vote is stupid. It's dumb. You don't need to know the nuances right now. All you need to do is voice your support. Just like you came up with a law, Bernie Sanders in this situation, you came up with a law for reparation to go to Holocaust victims, your people. You came up with it. You didn't ask all these questions concerning it. You drafted the bill anyway. Yet you supported what they did internationally. The international community said this should be done. The Human Rights Forum said this should be done. The UN said this should be done. And you worry about how. Worry about the how later. Just support it. Just voice your support. Voice your stance on it. And then try to find out how you can bring this as part of your campaign. Bring on people who are professionals at this, who are pushing this movement on your team so they can establish them. Stop acting like you know everything. And this go all the politicians. You don't know what it takes to bring the wealth gap, close that wealth gap. You think you know. Go to the people who've been fighting for this for the longest and listen to them. You might just learn something. I know this went long, but I'm Robert Brown with the Rob Report, special edition ADOS. I'll let you soon. Peace.